Boy, we've got a good crew here.
Oh,
We do.
so Drake, we were just saying maybe we should just go around and introduce ourselves while we're waiting for, I think there were about 20 people registered for today.
Yeah.
So maybe we could introduce ourselves while the stragglers are showing up.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, so I'm Karen Sikkenga. I am formerly of Mathi Botanical Gardens, Nichols Arboretum, and I was your chair when I was there, and now I'm the co-chair, and I've left Mathi Botanical Gardens, and I'm actually out on my own as a management consultant, but I'm still involved with my favorite people, the finance and operations community. So it's really nice to see all your faces. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see you in person in Indiana. I think the leadership team was very excited about that conference, and sad that we have to put it off, but hopefully we'll still be able to do it, but not this year. So it's nice to see you all virtually. It would have been even better to see you in person, I think.
Agreed. My name is Drake Fowler. I'm one of the co-chairs with Karen. I'm at the North Carolina Arboretum, and I've been here for 5 years. Prior to getting more involved in the garden world, I'm a landscape architect as well, and I really got my start in the garden world as my first internship was in Dow Gardens in Midland, Michigan, where I grew up. And I love Asheville. We're located in Asheville, North Carolina, and living day by day through the pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to getting to get this group together, because I think we all have something to learn from each other. So really looking forward to the conversation. Who else would like to? We're doing a little round robin and introducing everyone on the call.
Well, I'm Mary Coco, and I am from the LSU Ag Center Botanic Gardens in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a CPA, and I tell everybody I handle everything related to money at our gardens. If it's personnel, if it's donations, if it's paying the bills, it passes through my office. And I'm not a gardener, but I love going outside and seeing the beauty around us at our place.
That's great. Welcome.
I'm Mike Abkowitz. I'm CFO, Director of Finance and Operations at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin. We're part of the University of Texas at Austin. And I've been at the center for about 9 years now.
Thanks.
I'm Stephanie Banks. I'm with the nonprofit side of the public-private partnership that makes up the Birmingham Botanical Gardens in Birmingham, Alabama. I got to meet Mike in my office about a year ago, I guess, when you came through for a conference. And I was going to return the favor in April, going to see family in Lockhart, and pandemic. And I'm the CFO here, and I do everything from money to redesigning our fall plant sale to be COVID friendly and learning how to draw in Word. So you never know what a day is going to bring for me around here.
My name is Tammy Rollins. I am the CFO for the National Tropical Botanical Garden on Kauai in Hawaii. I just want to let you all know that it's 6 a.m. here, so I am not really awake yet. I haven't had my first cup of coffee yet either. So, but I've been in this position about 1.5 years. I was previously the controller, and I took over for Janet Mayfield when I don't know if you remember her from previous conferences, but she's now our CEO. Yeah, it's been a trying time as to be a CFO, so I've got my work cut out for me for sure. So I look forward to getting to know you guys.
Tammy, thank you for making the effort to join us at such an early hour. I don't think that anybody on the call is going to look at you askance if you decide to hide your video and go get a cup of coffee.
Thank you. It's brewing right now, so.
That's great. We've always threatened that the next CFO get together needs to be at your garden.
I think that would be a great idea. It's very beautiful.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to meet you. This is Jackie Gabrish from Mount Cuba Center. I've been at Mount Cuba Center now a little over 6 years. I have dual full-time responsibilities. I'm the assistant to the director of Mount Cuba Center, and I'm also the safety officer. I oversee all of the occupational safety and health programs, trainings, writing policies, procedures, wrote the Mount Cuba Center's reopening playbook. So obviously it's a juggling act for me, but it keeps me on my toes and very busy. So it's very nice to meet everybody, and I apologize again in advance for not connecting with you all via video. I'm having some computer issues, so it's just nice to be part of the group.
Great.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Megan Hanna. Everyone calls me Meg. I'm from Montreal up in Canada, representing the Montreal Botanical Garden. I've been the living collection supervisor, aka greenhouse manager there for the last about 4 years now. I manage a team in this current context of 35 to 40 essential workers. So we've been struggling through the pandemic with all of the different changes. I can definitely empathize with Jacqueline looking at health and safety procedures, writing procedures, rewriting procedures, and changing and being as adaptable as possible as public health information changes and as our greenhouses currently remain closed to the public, but we're talking about opening up very shortly. So I'm thinking a lot right now about how we can engage staff, keep them motivated, keep them safe, and up morale during these trying times. Thanks.
Hi, my name, oops. Okay, hi, I go by Millie. I'm from China, so my official name is Yuhui Zhou. So I'm the financial coordinator at the Arboretum at Penn State. So this has been a very hard summer for me because we just we used a new system to take over the old system. So there are a lot of issues and I'm daily overwhelmed by the amount of work. Today I'm in the office, so I find I work more efficiently in the office. And I have to leave in 40 minutes because there's a staff meeting and I'm hosting the Zoom meeting.
And I want to add also that Millie is a member of the leadership team for the finance and operations community. So she actually helped organize the symposium that we canceled, but she has been a member of the leadership team for about the past year or so, I think, right Millie, or even more than that?
Yeah. Thank you, but I do very little. Drake and Karen did most of the heavy lifting.
No, Millie's self-effacing, but okay.
Good to see you, Millie.
Yeah, you too, Drake.
Well, my name is Amanda Cote, and I'm with the Charleston Parks Conservancy here in Charleston, South Carolina. I was one of the ones who was really thrilled to attend the conference in Indianapolis. I was really looking forward to that. I've been with we're not necessarily a botanical garden, but we follow a lot of the same concepts. And and I've been in nonprofits for 15 years, but just with the Parks Conservancy for the last 6 years. So always learning, and this is another learning opportunity through this pandemic. So I'm excited to be here on this call.
Great. Thanks, Amanda.
I'm Kim Slager. I work at BHS Insurance. I'm one of 6 people on our insurance and risk management team that caters to the public gardening community for the past 20 years. And we have the privilege of working with many of you. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Kim.
And
Can you
I'm,
hear me? No.
Oh, yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Drake, after you.
Oh, I think someone else was chiming in.
Oh, please do.
Well, I'm the anonymous one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Chuck Cleaves. I'm hiding my face, but I'm the director at Kingwood Center Gardens, and of course, we all share the financial challenges. I'm just hoping that maybe something I hadn't thought of or a new way of looking at things can emerge from this meeting, and any ideas I'm very open to.
Great. Welcome.
Hi, I came on a little late. This is Caroline Spraga. I am the business manager at Duke Farms in Hillsborough, New Jersey. And yeah, I'm pretty new to this organization, so thought that I would join and see. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from all of you. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Welcome, Caroline. Really appreciate you coming.
All right, Casey. Oh, no. Oh, hi, Sharon.
Yeah, let's.
This is Sharon from California, Cal State Fullerton Extension side. This is my very first time joining this group. My involvement with our Fullerton Arboretum is that we recently incorporated Fullerton Arboretum to the extension side. So I am learning a lot from their operation side as well as the financial side. So I'm hoping to learn a lot from you guys too. Nice meeting you.
Great. Welcome.
I can quick introduce myself too, quickly, last but not least here. I work with Kim at BHS Insurance. So on the garden team for probably about 3 years now. So again, part of our little six little man team that we have. And so I get the pleasure of working with a few of you as well. So I'm happy to be here. And so thank you.
Great. Casey.
All right. Well, we have a couple of people who are joining too. So that may be Jackie by phone, looking at the 302 area code. But then Jonathan is joining us. I'll go ahead in the meantime. I'm Casey Sclar. I'm the executive director of the American Public Gardens Association, and I'm addicted to numbers, and I'm the resident numbers geek here. And I am your new liaison to the finance and operations community. Many of you knew your previous liaison, Kate Tarowski, who was our operations director, and Kate left our organization after 5 years earlier in July. So I am currently enjoying our annual audit this week. And I'm knee deep in that, along with some accounting friends that I have who are in helping as we're transitioning into a whole new realm of what we're doing. So that's really exciting. And so I love talking to finance people all the time. And as Kim and others can tell you, that's where my brain sort of gravitates to, as well as to this other hat that I wear, which is the programmatic passion hat. So I'd like to also kind of re-welcome and reintroduce Kim and Jessica from BHS Insurance. I'm gonna share my screen with you, and by doing that, I've just created just a very sort of scratch slide welcoming you all. I realize I didn't put in the Hawaii time zone, so I'm sorry about that, Tammy, but it's early for Tammy. Today's meeting is sponsored by BHS Insurance, and so thanks to Jessica and to Kim and to really their entire team for their generosity and their support. That goes really whether you're a client or not. These are people that I've known for many, many years, and who do great service to our industry. And so if you're hearing their name for the first time, I think by the end of this, you'll really see kind of the power and the passion that they bring for our industry and for our topics. Drake is gonna present to you kind of a rough agenda in a minute. Drake, I have that kind of sketched out in the subsequent slide if you want me to bring that up, but I'll be back and talk to you a little bit more about benchmarking in just a second. So welcome, and just really excited to see everybody here for this.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to welcome everyone. I'm excited to have that we have some new members to this group joining this call. I think both Karen and I want this group to really facilitate and help all of you. We all sit in these organizations that are really dynamic. I think what's interesting is when you start with a new auditor at a garden and you start going through your operations, you're like, yeah, we have a retail operation and we run a ticketing, operation, and we have events and weddings, and you start just going through, and a lot of gardens operate like 10 different kinds of businesses. And so I've found this group very supportive in terms of being able to bounce ideas off of, and I've learned a ton. One testimonial I'll just put out there is that when the pandemic originally started, I reached out to a couple of CFOs that I've garnered good relationships with because of going to our symposia. And this particular CFO says, have you switched your Winter Lights event to drive-through yet? And this was like I think this was in April. And I said, no, but I'm going to start working on that tomorrow because that's a great idea, just in terms of trying to create a COVID-proof event. And so we're in the middle of redoing our electrical. And I don't think I would have ever thought of making that change that early without that relationship. And so that's what I kind of hope that this group can continue to be, as a resource for each other. And to also just give a shout out to BHS. I think similarly, they know how to insure places that do kind of crazy things. So when you call them up and be like, hey, I need to insure perfume bottles because we got this exhibit about botanicals, and Kim and her staff are like, yeah, that's no problem. We can figure that out. And so they handle kind of all of our crazy requests. So to just outline today is we're gonna get an update from Kim about data breaches. I think many of us have been kind of involved in the Blackbaud data breach. We'd like to have a discussion around potential project ideas that this group could take on for the upcoming year. One previous project is we did a survey where we collected all the different data systems that the gardens were using in terms of for membership database, what are they using for financial, like QuickBooks. And so we collected a survey just to see what are the different systems that gardens are using to handle their kind of complex operations. And so, one option could be updating that. But maybe there's another thing that this group could take on as a project in terms of data collection that could be helpful for the group. And then I'd love to do some brainstorming with the group just on doing some breakout sessions so that we could get to multiple topics that people are interested in. And so we'll then break up this group into smaller groups to work on some areas that people are very specific about. What's interesting about this group is we have people working in a lot of different size gardens, some from very small to, some gardens have such huge endowments. They just want to talk about like the stock market and that kind of stuff, and sustainable investing and those kind of things. And so usually when we get together, we try to divide up so that we are trying to hit people in their like interests. So that's the rough agenda for today. And again, I just want to stress that this is really about trying to make this as useful for everyone that's on the call. And if this continues to go well, I'm also interested in if it's helpful to get together on a more regular basis via Zoom. I'd love to kind of entertain ideas of how this group could do that and maybe do it more often. So with that, actually, Casey's going to begin talking about benchmarking. And if you all have not participated in, it's a really great resource that we use quite a bit at the North Carolina Arboretum. I love, we all work in nonprofits and people are really passionate about their specific area. And when horticulture is like, we should be twice the size that we currently are, it's great to be able to go to benchmarking and be like, well, actually, for our size garden, we spend about 15% more than the rest of the other gardens. And so, again, what Casey's going to go over, it's just being able to use data within your organizations. And so I'll turn it over to Casey, and he'll also talk about just why this is really important to our association.
Yeah, and thanks, Drake. I purposely stopped sharing my screen for a minute just to talk with y'all a little bit about benchmarking and what we do and how we do it. And just to highlight a couple of Zoom tools that we'll be using in today's meeting. So not sure, I'm sure everybody's getting to be more of a Zoomie. Say, I don't know what you call it if you're familiar with it, but don't forget that you've got the reactions button down in there in the bottom of what you're doing. And then also we'll be using the breakout room feature, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about how we use the breakout room feature a little bit later on. But if you haven't done it, don't worry about it. It's really easy. And I'll be your facilitator behind the scenes of technology, so I can easily assign you to where you want to go and help you go other places and do other things. So, anyway, why is benchmarking important is probably the first thing. And just if you guys know about the reactions button that's down on your Zoom bar, just give me a thumbs up if you've used our benchmarking platform before, so I know how much of the choir I'm preaching to. So it seems like there's quite a few of you, and that's great. And hopefully there's quite a few of you that that are interested and want to know more about it, which is fantastic. The big why is really, it comes down to not only, like Drake said, knowing where your garden is and where your garden wants to head, but it also has some really strong national importance for us now that we're seeing in our advocacy efforts. So in order for us to go to the federal government and say our industry is in need of funds, they say, well, how can you prove that? And if your garden, or more importantly, your friends' gardens and your colleagues and your peers' gardens haven't participated in it, I can't get the data that I need to go to them and prove it. And so some of the data that we've been sharing for things like our COVID survey results, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but I'll switch over here and show you some of the COVID summary surveys that we've done and how we've done them and how to access those. But we're able to pull some really powerful data from those and layer them in with the statistics that we get from your gardens and benchmarking, and being able to say things like, collectively, we were, as our gardens are closed, we're losing $3 million a day in earned revenue across all of us. And so that results in us going to Congress and asking for $130 million for the time that our gardens were closed, based not on the lost revenue, but based on the horticulture and facilities expenses, the 1.2 million a day, just in horticulture facilities expenses alone, that we were spending while we were closed to preserve our priceless plant collections. And it's a very powerful thing. And it's an interesting process. What we're doing is there are certainly larger grants that I'm sure several of you have been involved in trying to write for, like the Institute of Museum and Library Services grant, the IMLS grants. That's a limited sum of money with a limited purpose, and it takes a very particular skill set of individuals, a lot of time to write for that. We're looking for, say, a direct appropriation. And so when we have your data from benchmarking to be able to say that and look after a direct appropriation, obviously we don't know what the next relief package is going to bring, but that direct appropriation could come through in an appropriations process next year, or it could come through in the next relief bill. And it's really regardless of administration. We find that when we're talking to Senate staff on the Republican side, for example, they're just as interested as our Democratic side. So while this is really sort of a nonpartisan thing, but what I'm consistently seeing is that need for us to talk about what we do as businesses. And so with that, I'm just gonna share my screen with you, run through a couple of things with you about some different things and some resources that the association has. So hopefully you guys can see garden benchmarking. This is going to lead you to a whole bunch of sites that hopefully most of you guys are familiar with. If you get nothing else out of what I'm going to do for you today and show you a couple things about what benchmarking does, just take this message home. I know that COVID has been tough on all of us. I can't open up the most latest round of benchmarking unless we have enough data to pull from. I'm not going to pull from incomplete statistics. So if all 18 of you entered your data for your garden, as much data as you can enter. You don't have to answer every single question. It takes you in between probably 10 and 30 minutes to enter 10%, which is really all you need to get started. Really high level information. The more information you enter, the more powerful it is. But take the time, talk to 10 of your garden peers. Oftentimes the problem is that we think we're not reaching the right people because, like, maybe Mary is new, or Caroline's a new member, or Tammy just rotated into the position. Sometimes there are things that we need to do on our side to make sure that you're getting the access to what you need, and it's there for you. But the tool's there for you, and we just want you to tell as many people about it as possible and get as many people, many different gardens participating as possible. So any questions before I launch into my 5-minute spiel on what benchmarking can do? All right, I'm dealing with a bunch of people. I'm preaching to the choir. So since choir members, get more choir members. That's it. After you log in, you hit a dashboard. This is my demonstration garden, Franklin Botanical Garden and Ben Franklin. This splash screen tells you whether or not you've participated yet or not. And the key thing to remember is we go off of fiscal year-end data as we work with things. So we're looking for your, if you haven't put it in yet for fiscal year-end, 18 to 19 would be the most recent cycle of data. And we're trying to get as many participating as possible. And obviously because of COVID, it's a little bit of a challenge, but again, 10 minutes to 30 minutes of your time can make all the difference in the world. In benchmarking, most of you all, when you sign up as finance professionals and or you're the, what we would call the billing person, the person who gets the membership dues on the account, you're able to see compensation and benefits and garden benchmarking. Comp and benefits is a full slate of what compensation for a range of different positions, everything from executive director to hourly positions, and also what benefits your garden is offering and a comparison and contrast to those from other gardens. We're going to stick a little bit more over on the garden benchmarking side today with what we do. But just know that that compensation benefits tool, if you haven't looked at it and you're a CFO or finance professional and your executive leader has said, yeah, I want you to have access to that. It's amazing. It's cost of living index adjusted. So if you're trying to figure out what your HORT team is making, for example, versus other HORT teams in the country by job title, if you're trying to hire an arborist supervisor, for example, what that is or what that looks like. So it's a great tool. Garden benchmarking itself is also a great tool. Knowing that I have a bunch of advanced people on here, I wanted to just highlight a couple things that make it fantastic that you maybe didn't know about. So I have in this demo purposefully not entered in my fiscal 18 to 19 data this year because, again, don't have enough data points opened up for this yet. So I'll take you back for others, but you can see even Ben Franklin in his garden don't enter 100% of the questions on 100% of the data. It's fine. One of the things that you can do with this, though, is you can always switch back to prior years just by going up here, shifting back. We'll go back to 2017 and 2018 data. And just like that, we're back. And then I'll show you the reports and charts feature. There are all sorts of different filtering capabilities that we don't have time to really go into today, but they're really valuable tools to use and utilize. The garden summary report's Word, garden report is PowerPoint with bar charts and everything else known to mankind. But if you haven't used it yet, the garden trend report, I think, is a really important thing. And that's what I wanted to focus on today, is using the garden trend report, because just knowing what the 3-year trailing trends are right now, as we all know that our businesses are really looking at, okay, what are some of the things that we need to do if we're going to right size our company? If your company is like our company, and you know that we may not be able to do things at exactly the same financial level we were able to do before the pandemic, having that garden trend report can be really important based on what organizations of like size were being able to do. So as I download this, I'm just going to download it without a filter. But for example, you could come in here and, let's say your garden's operating budget is $2 million a year right now. And maybe you want to see what it looks like for a garden of $1.5 million. Or you want to see, maybe there's some unexpected windfall and you want to see what a garden that's operating at $3 million a year is doing. You can look at that, and you can look at what their trends were over that time just by any of those filters that you have. The trend report is a great tool. Can everybody see that PowerPoint deck just kind of pop up there? So you're able to really kind of look. I did it for 2017 to 2018, and so it's going to pull from the trailing 4 years worth of data, as many data points as you put in there. So that's how everybody's annual operating budget has been. Our benefactor, Ben Franklin, left us exactly $2,040,000 a year every year. So our operating budget hasn't changed. But when you get into some of the different trends, I think you can kind of see, like, here's a really important trend that we're probably all going to be monitoring really closely, which is contributed income and contributed revenue. So, Franklin Botanical Garden was down. Betsy Ross passed away and stopped leaving us as much money as she used to, her descendants, so we dropped out. But I think you can kind of see as we go through this PowerPoint deck that there's a lot of really good stuff in that trend report. So if you don't know it for what it is, it's there. I can go on and on and on. Today's meeting is really about all you guys. And also, I think we really want to hear some great information from Sharon and Kim and Jessica. They've been doing some hard work on data breach. So I'm going to just kind of stop there. I just really scratched the tip of the iceberg. Just know that as members of the finance and operations community, I helped put together this platform from scratch. I'm dedicated to it. I am here to help you guys with whatever Q&A you guys need on it. We can do it through the discussion forum, and I think that just helps the platform more and more, have an input from you all. We developed it for you guys, and we're just happy to keep stewarding it. So as long as I'm your liaison, I will never stop mentioning benchmarking in anything that we do. So that said, I'm gonna I'm going to stop sharing about benchmarking. Any questions about benchmarking at all from any of you all? Any other input before we turn it over to our great folks from BHS who helped make this possible today?
This is Mike from Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. First of all, I use a benchmarking every year, and it's great. And Casey, you've been really helpful with getting us some information regarding other support from other university gardens. So we put our data in, it seems like months ago, and we're still not able to get reports for 1819. Any idea when those will be available?
Yeah, when enough people have participated, Mike. I hate to give you a glib answer, but we just don't have enough folks participating yet. So I want to make sure that there's a robust data set there. And they're just, I think a lot of it has been for obvious reasons. The pandemic has helped people just move on different things, but that's why my call out to you is I can't share anything that's less than a really good data set. So in some ways, we as a network need to reach out there and make sure that folks have entered in their data from 1819. So I realize that I'm preaching to the choir, but I can't really open a data set that doesn't have enough participants. So we're
is there a certain number of participants that are needed for it to be considered valid?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have close to 100 gardens participating before I consider it a valid year, and we are not there yet. So I'd like to have more, and I find that there's a lot of folks who haven't participated. Like I could give you the list of institutions that have participated in previous years that haven't participated this year yet, that we don't have their data in for it yet, and we're doing that as a communication stream right now. So if you guys can talk it up amongst your friends, we'll get there and we'll get there cleanly. But you know, I don't want to open it up with too little. I just don't think that's fair to you all. After in previous years, we've had well over 100 participants or institutions each year. So it's not individual based, it's institution based. And so when we can get, when we can get 250 institutions participating in a COVID survey, I think we can get folks spending 10 to 30 minutes in benchmarking and get it done.
So Casey, I didn't quite follow something you said. Are you reaching out now to the people that have participated in prior years but have not participated this year?
Yeah, we've been consistently doing it. I think one of the challenges, and this is where you all come in, is you probably know the people there at those institutions who are allies as well or better than I do. So just even asking the question of folks if they have done it yet this year or not is a good prodder, because especially with some changes happening in different leadership positions and different financial positions, our ability to contact the exact right people. And so, Tammy's a great example. Tammy, you took over as CFO, Janet migrated to the garden leader position. I know you all are huge devotees of benchmarking, but if that's happened at another garden, for example, we don't necessarily know that Tammy's the person who needs to fill it out and needs to enter the data. So it inhibits our ability to reach people, especially for compensation, where it really has to be a specific person. And a lot of that's just done for security's sake. Gardens benchmarking, that data is a little bit more open for everybody to be able to view by institution. So we just we can kind of broadly incentivize, but there's only a few people at each institution who have that capability to enter data. And so it becomes a challenge.
So when do you plan to open up 1920? Our fiscal year ended June 30th. So I'm ready to go on 1920 information.
Yeah, so if your fiscal year ended on 20, and when I say fiscal year 18-19, it's your most recent fiscal year that ended in either 18 or 19. And so if you just wrapped up your fiscal year, like we wrapped up our fiscal year in March, and so as the association, right, we'd be ready to go with, if we had a 20 to 21 survey, we'd be ready to go. But I'm just looking for 18-19. So it's all based on historical data. that y'all have. So as soon as I have enough in the 18-19 bucket, I'll be good. And it's easier to go back. So if you've never done it before, this is the thing that you can tell other people who are saying, look, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've never done it in a year. If they go back to the beginning years, they can easily update it for new fiscal years, because there's a feature that is a copy prior year data feature. So you can knock out in an afternoon 3 or 4 different fiscal years with high level data that doesn't change, like the square footage of the garden, or some of the associated staff data, or just even the general questions about how many board members do you have, what state are you located in. Like that stuff takes no time at all with that copy prior year data feature. So not a specific answer, but it's, and in realizing that I'm preaching to the choir, we just got to go out and get more people, and then we'll open it up, and then we'll be ready to roll over and open up another year and have a really good data set. And that's the problem with, the pandemic has made it challenging for us, but at the same time, for benchmarking, we kind of need that. And I think there's a desire to have that more than ever. I think more people are trying to figure out what others are doing. And so, again, knowing that I'm talking to a bunch of people who filled it out, your task is go find people who haven't and make sure that they do. You're now been converted from choir member to ambassador.
Great. Thank you, Casey.
Yep.
Well, I think I would love, maybe we could start after this, maybe we could start a string on the discussion boards, and I don't know, maybe Casey, you could help us understand sometime in the next week. Maybe we could set a goal for how many gardens we want to get to participate in the next month, and just try to really push as a group to just get over that benchmark.
Yeah.
Participate.
Sounds like a pretty easy task.
Great.
Yeah, it actually occurred to me as you were talking, Casey, that I mean, that could be a project of the Finance and Operations Committee, is getting full participation in the benchmark, or at least greater participation in the benchmark, and then pushing out ideas about how to use the benchmark to improve the operations of the gardens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The biggest barriers that I hear for gardens that don't participate is they say, well, it takes too much time. But those are the same gardens that really haven't been in it and seen how easy it is. So that's, that's something where that's a mindset piece. The second barrier is I don't have read-write permission. I'd love to participate, but I don't have read-write permission. Really super easy to go to your executive, say, look, I want read-write permission. I think this is useful. And all they have to do is send me an email saying, hey, I want to make this person have read-write permission. Done. The third thing I hear is that it's not, my garden's kind of unique, so I don't think that I qualify. And so we have about 600 unique organizations that make use of this. And this is a tool for you. And some members have asked me, well, you guys, I can't put this in because we have a split governance structure, and I'm worried that you guys are going to audit this particular value. And no, the only way that we audit this is we do an outlier analysis on it to make sure that when you say that your garden has a $1 billion a year operating budget, that maybe your pinky got stuck on the zero on that particular one. But that's the only way that we do it. It's a tool for you. We ask you to use it to your best capability. So oftentimes there are gardens that have sort of split governance structure that use it on the combined, like it may be you're a college and university garden and you're getting some specific suite of things in kind from your Office of Physical Plant. You can roll that in and that's fine. It's however you want to extract the tool and do the comparisons yourself. That's the value, we certainly ask that you try to encompass the full suite of visitors that are coming to your garden, because that way we get to say that we have 120 million visitors a year. And then as of now, we probably crushed professional sports attendance for live events right now. But that's another story for another time.
Great. I think we're going to move on next to having Kim talk to us about the fun world of data breaches.
Yeah. So how many of you use Blackbaud? Just a thumbs up if you do. Yeah, or yeah. So we have learned more about Blackbaud in the last couple of months than we ever did know before. And so I know a number of you have been affected by this. And so I'll just keep this short and sweet. And please know offline in the chat feature, whatever it may be, both Jessica and I have been knee deep in this. And we're happy to answer any individual questions because it is very individualized on how you use the system, what you use the system for, what you are using. But on or about July 16th, Blackbaud sent out emails to their constituents letting them know that they had a ransomware event. And in that dialogue, they advised which of your products were affected by it. And if you did not get an email from them, but you do use Blackbaud, we'll post something in the chat feature here on where you can go onto their website to see if you were affected. I know a number of people had the email went to development and perhaps that person's not there anymore and it never made its way to the right person within their institution. So if you do use them, you didn't get the email, my takeaway would be just double check. If you were affected and they advised you that it was All True or eTapestry or Financial Edge, Razor's Edge, whatever component it is, everybody's situation is a little bit different. And if you haven't vetted out understanding what data you have in there to know if you have a notification obligation, we highly encourage that you do that. Even Blackbaud in their letter stated that you should have legal review. Because in the end, when it comes to a data breach, you, the originator of the information, are the organization that has to give notification. So a number of you, I'm sure if anybody's contributed to a nonprofit organization, you've received letters and emails. And so one of the questions we get is, should we just go ahead and let everybody know? Because I've seen such and such institution, the museum down the street has already launched a release, and what should we do? I encourage you to really think through that before you do any voluntary notification. If you are not required by law to give a notification, from what we're hearing, the voluntary notification can create angst and question, and you just need to be very prepared to be able to answer those questions if they come to you, or have somebody in the garden be able to do that. Because with that angst will come potential lawsuits, because and in fact, it's already happened. One of the law firms we've been working really closely with, Mullen Cullen, had said that they've already seen lawsuits as a result of somebody being notified that didn't have their information breached, but they were upset about it. So just be very careful with that. In the era of transparency, I know a lot of us want to jump to that. And I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying make sure that you're involving counsel when you do. One thing that comes with it, if you carry a cyber insurance policy, you get a data breach coach for free. They will get on the phone with you. They'll talk through your situation with you. They will help understand what data is where. The good part about this whole event has been that the backup data that was breached by Blackbaud, by and large, doesn't have personal identifiable information, but everybody uses it a little different. Some people we've seen have scanned copies of checks into the notes section that may then have a name, address, routing number, and checking account number, and that will constitute personal identifiable information, or potentially. And understand too that in all 50 states, there's different notification laws. So you have to notify based on the state in which your constituent is in. So if I am going to Asheville and I'm at Drake's Garden, and I live in Michigan, you have to notify based on Michigan's notification laws. So it's just a very complicated, tangled web. It's not easy, cut and dry. What we're finding is the exposure has not been vast, but my takeaways to you on a cyber breach is really a couple things. One, data hygiene. Please put data in places where they belong and not in places where they don't belong, because then you can really ascertain very quickly at the CFO's level, what data do I have, where is it, and did it get accessed? And so I think part of the problem with this one is people use Blackbaud systems different. And thankfully their merchant component of their services was not affected at all, which that's the credit card processing side of things. So we know for sure that's not affected. But if somebody had saved in the donor database Kim Slager's credit card information, and it's in a notes section that's not encrypted, then that could have been affected. So just having parameters and using it for where it needs to be. And again, this is a conversation. Most of your development teammates are the ones that are using Blackbaud the most. So making sure they're on the same page. And then making sure that, cyber insurance is really inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. Most of the time you have a pretty low deductible, $1,250, $2,500. It really depends on the size of your organization. And to be able to have a breach coach that talks to you for an hour, that's legal counsel for free. And then if you need to expand it, it's really cheaper than hiring a forensic company to come in and do the due diligence for you, which I've heard their retainer fees are north of 10 grand. So that's kind of the short skinny on where we're at today. The other thing, I want to mention is like GDPR, which is the international, has different regs than United States, and California has its own regs. And so there's lots of moving pieces with that too. So it kind of depends on not only which state they're from, but if they're out of the country as well. So yeah, it's exciting stuff, really. Just what we need on top of COVID is a data breach, right? If you have any questions, you can post in the chat feature, or again, we'll show you. I know we did a short conversation with the development community within APGA earlier, I think it was last week actually, and we posted in there how to look on your Blackbaud account to see if you are missing that email. So I'll send that to Karen, and she can hopefully post that in the finance group too.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I think we're at the Arboretum. The biggest issue we're working through is just how to handle all the member inquiries and questions and those kind of things, and getting ready for those. So, thank you, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give my testimonial that this is the first time I've seen Kim and Jessica where I'm actually a client finally, and we did add this coverage. And of course, that doesn't mean I remembered I had it when this first dropped. And I'm talking to our ED, to Tom, and he said, "Well, check with our auditor." And I'm like, "Can't you rattle the cage of our attorney board members?" And then I think Jessica reached out to me, and it was. And it's been great ever since.
Yeah, that's a good point. You do kind of forget about it. When we had first caught wind of it, I actually reached out to Casey. I was like, "Casey, have you heard about from Blackbaud?" Because they're a big sponsor too, and what you know or what you don't know. And it's been a little fuzzy with getting answers out of there. And the nice part about having a legal firm on your side is they can rattle the cages there and get the right answers we need. So it's, with what we do know is some really bad guys got in, took some really big sensitive information, and then they paid them off, and now we're supposed to trust the bad guys that they destroyed it. So
Good.
Yeah.
And yeah, Kim, thank you. And Kim did reach out to me and said, "What are you hearing? What are you seeing?" And so I did kind of two things. One, we decided we'd post out to the community, but because we're not Blackbaud clients, we can't name the company by name. but we knew that you guys would figure it out. And then I've checked in with some of our other peer associations, and they're kind of similarly silent on the matter for obvious reasons. And so for us, it just does, as Kim said, it just goes back to just data hygiene. Bad Casey sends out stuff all the time, and there's some really good tools that are out there too. If you guys are thinking about ahead and saying, how do I prevent this going forward? There's a couple of different pieces of software that are out there that actually will send staff members suspicious emails and see if they catch them as suspicious emails, and can either reward them or shame them if they don't. And those same tools also can teach PCI compliance and some other educational things. So I think one of them is called Know Before, and they're great tools for you guys to consider. But you know, data hygiene is really a big deal. And so,
and if you use some of those resources, you can brag about that to your insurance advisor, and they can advocate for better pricing on your cyber insurance too.
Yeah. Okay. So we're buying Know Before this week, Kim.
Oh, good. That's a great one. We use that in our office too. And sometimes I can tell when it's our IT guy coming at me. I'm like, it's got to be him testing the waters to see if I'll click on it. But
yeah, these are the funny things, but serious too. All right.
Great. So I think we'll move on to the next portion of the agenda, and just talking about and this would be great to just have some open discussion about potential projects our community would like to take on this year. I think certainly one could be this kind of benchmarking advocacy. I know Casey does a good job of this, but I do think some peer-to-peer pressure could potentially be more impactful. But are there any other ideas of things that you all can think of and be like, man, it would be really great if I understood this, or if we had this resource available?
I know one of the things that Drake and I have talked about, and the leadership team, is having regular, since we couldn't do the annual symposium or the biannual symposium, would more of this kind of thing be of interest to you guys? See, Megan did its thumb. I see a few thumbs up.
Look at that, the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, one thing we know from past symposia is how much you guys like talking to each other and just sharing and brainstorming and networking ideas. And I feel like this is this really competent, sort of high performing group of people who have lots of good ideas and lots of best practices to share. So what would be less work for our leadership team would be just putting out concepts like, this month we're going to talk about this topic, and next month we're going to talk about that topic, without necessarily doing formal programming. Do you guys, I mean, does anybody have any thoughts about what kinds of things you'd like to see if we did online discussions every month? What would you like it to look like?
I think a survey format would be really good for the message board, especially the people who couldn't be on the call today. Just kind of survey through the discussion group, different topics, maybe compile that data and then put that out there. Maybe a calendar. It doesn't have to be the whole year, but maybe like 3 to 6 month intervals. Here's what we're looking at, and that could kind of progressively garner some interest. Just an idea.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Like surveying on topics of interest, you mean, Megan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really easy for us to set up moments like this. So it's not hard for us to provide the space in the Zoom host for you all. It doesn't take that much to do it. So topic's great, but if we also want to get into a monthly groove for example, and then you just know that that's the time. That's something that we're certainly interested into and can support.
Yeah, I like this idea of the, because one theme I think we've seen in this group is that we all wear lots of hats, and our time is so limited. At the same time, we don't necessarily have time to kind of read through a bunch of documents, and so I think having some discussions, like, I was thinking when I was hearing what Jacqueline's working with at Mount Cuba, just, when we're trying to figure out, one thing that we find is that our horticulture group, when one of them gets sick, it seems like they all get sick in the wintertime. And so we're very concerned about procedures, about safety, as the weather starts to turn. And, with COVID, we don't have enough vehicles because we're not letting people drive together in vehicles. And so we have staff members like walking across the gardens, and you're like, this could be a potential breakout session for today just to talk about that. But gosh, is there a better way to do what we're doing to keep our staff safe and those kind of things? And so I guess what I'm saying is I could see us having a topic discussion maybe on a Friday, where if the group kind of sees, oh man, I'm struggling with that too. And then in a half an hour, we can maybe have a really robust conversation and learn a lot of things, and it be kind of easy for this group to kind of access that information.
Drake, this is Jackie. Thank you for your input. I actually was typing a message to everyone centered around that topic, and I would love to see this group discuss topics relevant to safety and as it parlays into risk management, so we're ensuring effective risk management, mitigating any risks. Part of my level of expertise is risk assessment. So we just had this big, this large storm came through. Well, it ended up being a Category 1 tornado, and we had significant damage. But what I'm now looking at is there were also some risks associated, potential risks that there was, could have been potential harm to our employees. But so I look at each incident and say, well, how can we do this different? How can we do this more safely? And it's a struggle because safety is something that not everybody, it's on the forefront of everybody's minds, but it absolutely directs our overall impact, right? So it is something we need to continue to steward to ensure we're making the right choices and procedures and processes. So long and the short of it is, I would love to see this group have more discussion centered around the topic of safety, procedures, and safeguards as we move forward.
Great.
I always have to add that coming from the public-private partnership, I need Matt here for my other guy that I know struggles with some of the same things in San Francisco. But with that safety issue, we are the Friends group. I'm part of the 19 Friends, and there are about 20 City of Birmingham who are predominantly the horticulture and the building services and the rental crew. And we have different leadership. And so state mandate for all this aside, which is not being enforced in Alabama, there are different levels of compliance between these two partnerships. And I want to keep my staff safe, but we can't enter our offices through our windows. I mean, you have to go through the public area of the building at some point. So it can be a little disconcerting and kind of morale busting. So there's even down to that detail.
Yeah. I think what we find is some gardens, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And so, I think that's what's neat about this group is that some gardens are really focused on this, and then others are, doing just enough to get by. And that goes in all different kinds of topics in terms of maybe it's like financial reporting. Some gardens are like wizards at it, whereas other ones just do it good enough to get by.
Drake, to help with the efficiency, you know, because I know there a lot of gardens don't have that safety manager role, you know, and I certainly am happy to share any of the policies and procedures that I've written, because at the end of the day, there's very similar and like characteristics and safety concerns, right, within all of our gardens. Of course, you have to follow your own, you know, government and state standards there. So, but for the most part, like severe weather or insect tick bites and those sorts of things. But we can start sharing our information to help take the burden off from some of the staff as well, just to get you to where you need to be and feel good about it.
Yeah, just a side note on this, the discussion group platform that we have is a great place to share resources and share other ideas and get answers to questions. And I know that you all use it. So the ability to share, say, like Jackie was saying, sample policies, safety policies, you know, one person needs a insect and tick bite policy, another one needs jewelry, ring and watch. And the methodology there is that what gets uploaded to that discussion group isn't necessarily something that's also simultaneously uploaded to our library and media center. We may go back to you and say, hey, would you mind sharing that? And I know, like Jackie, for example, you guys have shared some great COVID resources that have been available for us to disseminate out to a more broader audience. But based on where your garden is on the financial reporting journey or the safety journey, you always know that that portal is just exclusive to folks in the community, and is certainly a resource that's there.
Yeah, and a lot of these kind of administrative tasks get dumped on many of our desks when, you know, we're not experts in this, but it's also up to us to figure it out. I think like Stephanie and I would talk about this when at previous conferences to be like, oh yeah, could you rewrite our emergency operations plan? You're like, I don't know anything about this. Why am I in charge of this? And so, but it's good to know that I should call Jackie.
Well, I was going to mention that you guys probably remember that I put out a call for ideas for discussion topics, and I did get a few ideas. And one of them was like, you know, security and specifically about data breaches because of the black bot thing. Somebody asked about maintaining morale and employee productivity now while so many people are transitioning to or working remotely. So, you know, how do you manage this remote working environment? Somebody said, well, what about just staying in business during COVID-19 because of this tremendous loss of shared revenue? You know, how do we manage budget cuts? How do we maintain revenue? And then the fourth, or maybe this was two discussion. One was about annual events like the light show going to a kind of virtual or drive-through format, and another was about plant sales and who's canceling their plant sales, who's going virtual, and who's just trying to do it in person with keeping in mind social distancing and all that kind of stuff. So there were a lot of ideas. I mean, I'm throwing all those out there, but just to say, you all had lots of ideas about topics that I think are probably a pretty general interest, and a lot of them related to COVID-19 and how are we managing in this crisis.
Yep, I think.
Well, I was the part of that morale thing. I reached out to Karen because one of those things that I need some quick expertise on and to write a policy is a flexible working arrangement policy. And we have a telecommuting, but that was then and this is now. But we want to really make it pretty well. My AD says a real blanket policy. So he wants it to be, we've been advised by a board member, broader is better. However, there are all these details we need to catch in it. So if anybody's got one of those, I'm buying.
Yeah, so some of those resources we made available during during COVID on our COVID business resource page. So Stephanie, we're certainly our own association's telecommute policies in there, and it's got flexible work schedule and other things. And it was created as we were going remote. I mean, one of the silver linings for us in all of this was we were pretty much 85%, 95% remote before this all started. We had migrated a lot of stuff, and so this was just sort of like the last little bit for us. And so we figured we'd share it with you. But you've identified a lot of. There's that. There's the how do I make sure that I'm in the essential worker conversation, and that the staff who are essential and need to be essential can be essential and be on site. There's so many more you can kind of go down with.
Yeah, we've recently with North Carolina schools going back and mostly virtual, we're relooking our children in the workplace policies, because there are certain folks that, I mean, it's just really complicated for parents right now. And, you know, I think we're at this crossroads of, are we gonna provide some resources to staff? Otherwise, I think they're just gonna take FMLA and they'll be out and not available at all. And with our organization's about 50 employees, when you have, 4 or 5 employees that just go completely out on FMLA leave, really puts a lot of stress on the rest of the organization.
We can too, at BHS, we do have an HR consultant that works with our clients, and I can reach out to her too to find out if she's got some sample policies. We also work with a platform called Think HR, which has some really good already created, legally vetted sample policies and procedures as well. So I will tell you, Drake, that you're the third person today who has asked me about children in the workplace. So I hear you, and we'll work on something there. The concerns that we have is obviously how they'll be monitored, how they'll be managed, how do we make sure that they're in a safe place, that there's never any one-on-one adult interaction. But you guys have been dealing with kids programming for a long time, so you've done it very safely in that way. And so I think that it needs to be something that helps us with this constant flexibility we have to show. So we can help in those areas too.
Well, that's what we're looking at. It's like we have all these youth education staff that are struggling because normally they would be doing field trips and those kind of things. And so, it does on the surface seem to make sense, but we all know that we can get into that all these kind of different policy changes you got to look at it from so many different angles, because what seems like a good idea 6 months down the line can have some adverse issues long-term in the organization. Okay, so that was great. So I think we can, I think what we heard is that it would be good to come up with like a topic-based outreach to this group. And maybe we could even use some surveying just to send out to the group also just how you all want to be engaged, if it's this kind of Zoom format, if we want to do other types of formats. And I think even maybe with some of this appropriate content could be the discussion boards, but maybe even through survey, just like it would be great if we could survey on X topic or Y topic. So I think that was some good feedback for Karen and I. Thank you. So for today, Karen mentioned those other topics. If we wanted to do a more in-depth breakout, we've got, let's say, a solid 20 to 25 minutes for those. What are some of the topics that
Well,
the group
Drake,
really...
I'm not That
Yeah.
we got about 10 minutes left today.
Okay. 10 minutes.
That was me. Yeah. So I'm thinking maybe not this time, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there time for a breakout today, or do you want to talk about scheduling the next one as a separate session?
I would advise as a liaison, and maybe what you do is you pick a topic and don't bother with a breakout. And just take some open Q&A from folks and go from there, and then set up a couple solid topics for next time.
That sounds good. Who is attending that had this topic that they were hoping that we discussed that maybe we haven't yet?
You checked mine off. I'm getting lots of, so check mine off about the policy. I'm getting lots of great stuff in the chat. So
Awesome.
Except you mentioned plant sales. I didn't know about that one. Who's having a plant sale this year?
Well, I'm not there anymore, but I know Mathi went ahead and they shifted their plant sales to a virtual ordering, and then they sequenced the people to come do the pickup. So people weren't there on site browsing. They were doing all their browsing online, but then they came and picked them up, and the orders were all ready. And they kind of put together your package would be there, and it would say Stephanie Banks on it, and you'd drive up at your appointed time and they'd hand it to you, and you would have already purchased it online. And they sold out within, I think, because by the time they sent out an email thinking that maybe they wouldn't sell anything, and I looked at the email maybe 4 hours after they'd sent it, and by the time I clicked in to purchase something, it was all sold out. So
when you say sold out, what's your typical gross on that? How many plants are we talking? We're bigger than, we still have the old dinosaur large plant sales, so.
Yeah, well, that's not, we had gone away from that to a series of smaller, we had Mother's Day sale, and then there was a native plant sale and a kitchen garden sale that were on separate weekends, with a much smaller volume of plants, which we found was more profitable than the great big.
I'm trying to hit a number that was normally 50,000 in gross for our fall plant sale. So virtual's been a lot of fun. We're trying to move that to a pre-order, but how many PDFs can you stick in a website for people to do like a sushi menu with their crayon and send back? I've been advised that's too much to do a POS with. So anyway, but it's early.
Yeah, Denver Botanic Gardens had a pretty successful plant sale earlier this year, so you can tap into them.
Mike, unmute.
Yeah, we're going to try something completely different. Rather than having a big, humongous, all out 2-day plant sale where we're trying to sell $75,000 worth of plants, we're moving to an ongoing plant sale, probably 4 days a week for several months, in a much smaller area, reservation only for time specific, so you can come in and with preference given to high-end donors to getting first shot at it. So we'll have less volume, it'll be less staff intensive, but spread all over a longer period of time.
The way we're set up, we find that the smaller ones take about as much manpower to come up with a day. If we do a Saturday, we did a lavender sale, so we grossed $2,000 and it probably still took 3 days. So it's sort of better for us to figure out a way to get it all out there, but we are trying to drive to the pre-orders. But Drake can tell you who's in charge of summing up all those orders every day and getting back with a pickup time to them. So anyway, I'm slightly regretting saying I'll make it happen.
So for anybody that's done a plant sale where you can purchase online, what software did they use?
PDF. I mean, honestly, we didn't have the time. So we in Excel, we did 4 plant lists for the 4 major growing groups. Ours is volunteer grown pretty much. And so we just did 4 separate PDFs thinking the public really wouldn't want to see 400 plants on the same PDF. So we just did the major tabs on our website of herbs, trees and shrubs, perennials, and natives. And so they could hit any tab they wanted, and then they could either scan, photograph, whatever, get it back to us, or if it was a small list, and we did have a minimum order of $60, if it's a small list, they could just type it in the body of the email. So it was pretty old school, but I talked with some other groups here that tried some smaller native sales, and we found out we just have so many more plants that in that crunch of time, old school was better.
So you could not select your plants and pay online?
We did find out that that's not good for us, because then they'll get there and they'll go, oof, that azalea looks puny. And then, what are you going to do? Have a bag of cash and hand them back some money? So we like cash on pickup, or credit card on pickup.
Hey, Mary, I was going to chime in. We're looking at setting up an online little gift shop, and our IT guy is working with our visitor program people, and he selected a program called Shopify to set it up. I don't know much about it yet, but it's inexpensive and it should be pretty easy to use. So it's called Shopify.
Seems like I've heard of that before. But then I had Stephanie's concern about what if somebody pays and then they drive up to get their plants and, oh, they don't like it. You didn't pick out the right one.
It happens more than you want it to.
What we found, we have a couple of local garden centers that are community partners for our garden. And they have just been getting slammed because so many people are staying home working on their yards. And so we just gave them all our plants and they sold them for us and gave us all the money. So that was awesome. Because they were so low on inventory, they would take they were just looking for plants. And so they sold them all for us and then just wrote us a check back and didn't even take a cut. So
it happened with us, Drake.
Mm-hmm.
In our spring where we gross about 180,000, and we called it off 4 weeks in, and we were very lucky that we have a few turnkey orders for that, and they were selling like crazy, so that we were out nothing on that. We were able to cancel orders. But our growing groups, because of our space here, take seed, or I'm CFO, tiny little plants, whatever you call them, seedlings, and they grow for us at some of the nurseries, the wholesalers around town and are out in the near our town. And they were wonderful. They said, well, if we can sell them, then we didn't have them up pot, so we didn't lose anything. And then our gift shop is outsourced, and they have a nursery a garden shop down the street, and did the same thing. They said, send them to us. And we got a nice check at the end of that. So nice. That was all good.
You're going to want to do that every year, right?
It wasn't that much.
Getting a check and doing no work, that sounds like
that is good, but it wasn't that big of a trip. The check was the size of the credit we now have with the tent company, because our spring plant sale is off site because of its size, and they were willing to credit it at next April. So vaccine, come on, we need next April. So that's where we are on our plant sales.
Good. What other, we've got 5 more minutes. Is there any other topic that's kind of burning a hole in someone's pocket that they would love some just feedback on?
I think all of us probably have spent a lot of time trying to figure out your budget. We just finally released an annual budget because we kept going through these revisions and then revising again. And, our state is a little different from the mainland because we're isolated by all that water. And so, we've been closing we've been mandating quarantines to anybody who's traveling from the mainland, that you have to quarantine for 2 weeks before you can get out and about. And intermittently, they're imposing inter-island quarantines as well. So our visitor numbers are just horrible, and it's been impacting our earned revenue hugely. Anyway, it's August already. We've got a board meeting in November where we present another budget, our first shot at our next year's budget. And just wondering, you guys are probably having to think about that already as well. How are we going to budget for next year? I mean, what is next year going to look like, and how do we come up with something that's going to be meaningful? You know, and the world is so upside down. We just don't even know. It's just.
Well, one budgeting technique for that is to you could do a worst case, a likely case, and a best case scenario in your budget that kind of forecasts, well, if there's a virus and if there's a vaccination and it's widely distributed and our visitation comes back up to normal, that's kind of your best case scenario. Your worst case is a continuation of what we're seeing right now. So whatever your activity has been for the last 3 or 4 months, then say that's what it's going to be like for the next year. That's your worst case. And then your medium case would be, you know, some averaging of the best case and the worst case. And that to me is probably the likely case, is it's not going to be, I assume that things are going to get better. Maybe I'm wearing rose-colored glasses, but let's assume that we're going to get a handle on managing the virus and things are going to get a little bit better over time, but it's not going to be up to normal. So your likely case is going to be somewhere in between. I mean, that's really, realistically, that's really the only kind of budget model that makes sense, I think, in the current environment, because we really don't know what the situation will be.
Yeah, one technique I used, we just approved our budget, is I wrote a very extensive memo that went along with it that just listed all the assumptions I was making. And really that went well at our board meeting, because then we talked about the assumptions, and it was less about the numbers. It was more about, and you know, our board was very understanding, because it's more than a guess than it is every year, right? Like, you know, every year there's a certain amount of, you know, informed kind of guessing, but this year it just seems wild. And so, you know, I put in there, it's like, I'm going to assume that we're going to do youth camps next year. You know, that could, I don't know, but like, this is what this budget's based on. And I think at least our board, I think, really understood that budget. The other thing I did is when I did my budget comparison, I did it compared on last year's budget instead of last year's actuals. Because last year's actuals for me, which we just ended June 30, you know, they're so screwy because we were closed for 2 months. It's really hard to compare against something that was so out of the norm. And so they were pretty familiar with last year's budget. And so they could see the moves we were making in the budget, I think, a little bit clearer by showing them, here's what a typical year is. Because last year we approved this budget thinking it was going to be typical. And so they could see that, okay, we're projecting program revenues to decrease by 40%, but membership, you know, is going to increase, and we have a new development strategy and those kind of things. So those two things certainly helped me with getting through the budgeting process.
So I'm going to interrupt here because we're a little bit after. We're at 1:32. So, and I know, speaking for myself, I'm going to have to sign off pretty soon. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. I know Casey has reserved this time until 2. So if anybody wants to stay on and continue the chat, then we do have that little bit of a cushion time. but I wanted to promise that Drake and I will be following up with some suggestions for future chats, and maybe a little bit of a survey. Maybe we'll also survey about what times would be most wanted, because there is a range of time zones and all that. So expect to hear some follow-up from us. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'm sorry that I have to sign off, but I've got another appointment waiting for me. So really appreciate all your time, and expect to hear from me soon. Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you.
Bye, Karen.
So I'd offer up kind of two things for you, Tammy. The first is that I really applaud what was said about trying to just go as conservative as possible with estimates and developing kind of that worst case scenario budget. Just because at least from there, any news is kind of good news. I did put our in our chat our third COVID survey results that we just published like a week or so ago. It's in chat, and there's a lot of data there about the average revenue loss assumption. So that's there too. But it's a challenge. We reforecasted ours, and I do a budget narrative like Drake was saying every year. And, you know, based on that, once you get a vaccine, it's great, but you also don't know if everybody's going to be really super bullish or have the resources to travel once you have a vaccine. So you have to have that assumption.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a while before things return back to normal. You know, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Years, probably.
Yeah, most of our
I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, and hopefully everybody's going to want to come back to Hawaii. So we'll see our visitor numbers come back. You know, I'm thinking people would rather go to Hawaii than maybe travel internationally. So, you know, if there is a vaccine and it's widely available, hopefully people will be moving around again by summer of next year. You know, it's just hard to know when it's going to be out there, you know. So I thought, but we use our budget so much for our department heads to know what they have to spend, right? So if I come up with this uber conservative one, then they're not going to have any money in it, right? Because if things are better than we projected. So I'm kind of thinking maybe about doing like a quarterly revision. I mean, usually it's one budget, this is what's approved, this is what we work off of.
Yeah.
But in such a strange, unusual economic time, it might be better to just have, okay, here's our original, estimate one. And then as we get more clarity on what's happening in the world, we, maybe make adjustments to it and call it estimate 2 for the second quarter. And then, keep doing the same thing each quarter as we see how the economy is actually operating. Because otherwise, it's just kind of a junk budget, it doesn't provide the guidelines that we're used to having if it's not real enough, I know it's always a guess, but usually, we're pretty good at getting fairly close to reality, and now it just seems like it's hard to wrap your head around what the reality is going to look like.
The quarterly that you're suggesting, when this started, whenever it was, 100 years ago, we have pretty frequent executive committee meetings, and so we did the steady recoveries, moderate recovery, slow recovery, showed them all three, and our executive committee picked with our guidance the moderate recovery. And now with each, usually bi-monthly, it was about the time that they meet, we update that with, we started with, we are on a calendar year, 4 months of budget, and and 4 months of reality and 8 months of budget. And we just keep, those things keep getting closer to whole. And, but for the next year, when you were saying quarterly, of course, if you didn't have those departments with money, you assume that if things get better, there's going to be revenue to counter that expense, even though generally most of our money goes to personnel, and you're either riding the wave and hoping and retaining, or you're making personnel changes. So that's the budgeting process for us is, of course, going to push that personnel envelope a little bit that we haven't had to, because we got PPP and
Right.
We've been able to glide. And of course, our board, with showing those recovery scenarios, our board was hanging on with us. But I'm with you. I don't know. Ours is approved by our full board in November, and for next year. And I'm not even sure I can go to my relatives for Thanksgiving. So, I mean, how do you budget for 12 months? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the quarterly is a great idea. And I think it's a great time to just continue watching the data coming in, because I think so many of our employees, we're just creatures of habit. So our events, anything that's an event related, wedding, program revenue, is just decimated. But we're finding that membership is stronger than ever, because people that are locals know that they're not going on vacation and it's their year to renew. We just sent out a renewal notice to people that had lapsed their membership in the past 2 years. And I think we gained almost 800 memberships through that campaign. Because I think people are like, oh yeah, that garden, and we're not going on our vacation. It's a staycation this year. Let's renew our membership again. But what's interesting is I think we've had to sit down and talk with our marketing team in terms of, we're not going to market events this year. I mean, we're going to do it minimally, but we need to put more, maybe we need to put a more emphasis on membership in terms of educating the public. And so I think trying to make those little pivots with the information as it comes in is really important.
We had to do that with ad commitments. Of course, you start those contracts at the beginning of the year and they were typically for our events. And so my marketing person said, well, how sure are you about this small plant sale? Not. And so I said, can you pivot? Can we more for the end of the year? Hey, remember the gardens? It's we're still here and we need you, with just philanthropic donations. And we are going to try to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
We did a save our staff kind of campaign that basically says all your money that you'll give for this campaign is going to go towards staff retention.
Oh.
And that, I think we raised $160,000 from our membership that way. Because I think people have money, right? People have money. They're sitting at home. They're ordering Amazon things. But they want to help out, but they, even our volunteers can't show up. And so what we found is one way that they can do is contribute. And so we've found some, elasticity there that it's people are a little bit more willing to, or upgrade your membership to help us through this time.
Yeah, what we've been hearing coming back from different organizations is there's some membership incentivizations really help in terms of, you get preferential time ticket access or some other things when that's a potential, but then just the greater kind of contributed income to the greater why and greater cause could be really successful for y'all, Tammy, because they don't have to come to support the things that the garden does. And it's not enough to offset, the earned revenue from events, but it certainly is. It hasn't been worse than a lot of people anticipated, and in a lot of cases, I'm hearing quiet success stories.
Yeah, we are seeing, we've had, definitely our development department has kicked it up a notch for sure. So we've got a lot of lost earned revenue to make up, right, in order to maintain our payroll. And so we did a Seeds of Hope campaign that just ended, and we did a membership drive. We slashed the, memberships in half for any Hawaii residents or part-year residents, so we could, get more of the local clientele to come in and spend some time in the gardens. So that's helped, and we're asking our trustees to pay up early instead of waiting until December. Those last few days in December is when, we get a lot of contribution revenue. So we're asking, please, if you can, pay it a little earlier than you normally do, or at least let us know what we can count on from you. So far we're, looking pretty good contribution wise. And I think you're right. I think people still have money, the stock market came back. And so, I think that's helping. Hard to know what the rest of the year is going to look like, but for now it seems to be good. It's just, for next year with that still reduced earned revenue, it's going to be a challenge, to get by, because, we had a good $1 million to help our general operations, so that we won't have if the visitors don't come back. So
yeah,
challenging.
Well, one thing that we're preparing for is we're partially state funded, and with these kind of crises, the states are always a year behind in terms of when it starts to really hurt. And so, the tax returns this year were based basically pre-COVID, but they're anticipating just the tax returns for next year to be significantly less. And so what's the ripple effect through local governments in the funding?
And about the first 15 minutes of the meeting, I was checking my email on my phone, and our board president sent that today was the day they were going to announce the city of Birmingham budget, which the budget year started July 1st, and they're always late, but this year they almost had a reason to be. And so I'm listening to you all, and I'm looking at it on my screen, scrolling through to see how it's going to affect. We don't encumber funds. We are a true separate partnership, but they're a big employer for the outside pieces. And of course, they're going to close all open positions and not fill those to save, and put out an early retirement package. I did find out in my skimming, and that may cut 30% of the city of Birmingham staff on our grounds. And yeah, it's hard enough to do it with, they were already understaffed, and that will just make our job. They look to us because, we're the money bags, and they look to us to maybe could we contract that out? I've been here 15 years, and I think about 17 years ago, they offered to, the Friends group offered to pick up the mowing and blowing, and that was to be temporary, and I still pay that bill every month. So, and precedent gets set. So it just keeps, our teeter-totter just keeps going to the Friends paying for most of the things that happen around here, except for utilities and water.
Yeah.
All right, well, Tammy, you've seen that our group is very therapeutic.
There's a lot of comments. Yeah.
And I am going to have to jump, but thanks so much. And I don't know, Tammy, if you were Hawaii, Southwest doesn't fly to Hawaii, but I'd already booked my ticket to Indianapolis on Southwest, so I could scam the points, and I got the non-refundable. So with Southwest, which I think is the world's greatest airline on the way they handle things, you have reusable travel funds for 1 year. So it goes into that bank, and usually I just use points to fly, but so this was on the business card, so nobody else can use it, and now it's in a reusable fund. And Southwest 2 weeks ago sent an email that they are letting you convert for the first time ever until December 15th, any reusable funds into your point bank, which never expires. So I'm ready to roll whenever we set up the next symposium. And I like the idea of informal topics for us. I think people have got stayed, the Zoom fatigue with some of the bigger group meetings, and aren't really, our attendance is starting to drop even with our board meetings, which were stellar at the beginning because no commute. But to just throw a topic out and those who want to come talk about it at a certain time, I think is great.
Yeah, great.
Y'all don't stop talking, but I am going to hit the infamous leave and have a really good frozen shot at it.
Sounds good.
No, I didn't leave yet. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Tammy. Tammy,
Okay.
thanks for having breakfast with us. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. Take care.
Okay, you guys, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.